Greetings and welcome to yarnspirations.com. I'm Mary Beth Temple from Hooked for Life, and in this video we're going to take a look at the very cleverly designed Knit Shadowbox Blanket. To make this project you'll need Patons Canadiana in teal heather, pale teal and Aran, or 3 colors of your choice of course, a pair of size US 7 or 4.5 millimeter knitting needles for the motifs, also a US 7 or 4.5 millimeter size circular needle, 36 inches or 91.5 centimeters long or longer for the edgings, or of course the size you need to obtain the proper gauge. And you'll need a stitch marker. Now all of these motifs are knit in the same manner, but the color work is different. So we're going to take a quick look at how to make those color changes nice and neat, and then you will make the motifs as directed. The knitting is the same, the colors are different, and then assemble them according to this handy dandy chart. So let's take a look at motif 1. So all of the motifs are knit in the same fashion, but from motif 1 or motif 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 or whichever one you're doing, the color change is different. So the number of rows you knit before you change from the 2 color stitching to the 1 color stitching, that's what makes the motifs different. So we're going to begin by casting on in 2 colors. Now this does not necessitate a 2 color cast on, which is used when 2 colors in the first row are alternating, or you have 5 of one and 4 of the next. Because it is half one color and half the other color, you are literally going to do 2 cast-ons right next to each other. So with A, cast on 38, with B, cast on 39, for a total of 77 stitches. So there is my A cast on, and there is my B cast on, and nothing is connected at this point. It is 2 separate cast-ons. When I go and knit the first row is when that's all going to join up. So cast on the appropriate number of stitches in both colors, and then for your first row of knitting you're going to knit in the color you cast on with, and it will tell you very specifically in the pattern how many to do. Let's see, first row with B, so that's my lighter color, I'm going to knit 37. So I'd cast on 39 and I'm knitting 37, so I'm going to knit across until 2 stitches remain in the lighter color, and then I will come back and we will talk about how to put the yarn in the right place for a neat color change. So on the first row I have with B knit 37, and now I'm going to do that PSSO. So we're going to slip 1, and now the instructions at the beginning where we have all our definitions up at the top, it tells us that we're going to slip the next stitch knitwise. So we're going to slip 1 knitwise, then we're going to knit 2 together. You have 1 of each of the 2 colors. So we're going to knit 2 together. Oops, I split it there. Let's try a better job. And then PSSO, pass slipped stitch over knit stitch. I like to hold on to my working yarn, not too tight. I'm not trying to pull it, but I want to make sure that that stitch does not pop off the end of the needle. And as you can see, my 2 sides are joined now. Now I'm going to place the marker on the stitch that I just made, and I prefer a locking stitch marker because we're marking the stitch, not the needle. And now I'm going to knit to the end of the row in my other color. Let's make sure I don't have the tail. So I'm going to give that a little tug to keep it neat. And for color changes, now, so this is a right side row. So the back side of the work, this is the wrong side of the work. And for color changes, we always bring the new color under the old color. So there's my new color coming up under the old color, and then I'm just going to go ahead and knit to the end of the row. It does tell me with A knit 37, but I know that that is to the end of the row. So I am going to finish this row, and then on the second row it says with A knit 37, and then we're going to talk about the color changes on the wrong side of the work. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this row and begin the next row and come back and we'll talk about that color change. Okay, working on the second row, I was doing with A knit 37, which is how many stitches I have in the A color. Now it says bring A to the front of work because I want my color change on this side. So the front of the work is the wrong side because this is a wrong side row. So with B, knit 38, which is knitting to the end. So once again, I want my new color, which is the lighter color in this case, under the old color. But I have to bring this yarn back here so that it's available to me to knit when I go back in the other direction. Now, you can, at this point, move the stitch marker up if you want to. I personally feel like I'll be able to tell which stitch is supposed to be marked, so I discovered when I was working on this project that I was perfectly happy moving the marker every other row because the decreases all happen on the right side rows. There is no decreasing on the wrong side row. The only thing you have to pay attention to is bringing that yarn forward so it's available to you when you need it. So I'm going to finish this row and then I'm going to do the beginning of the third row, which is in this case knit 36, and then we'll do that slip 1 knit 2 together PSSO, and at that point I'm going to move the marker. So I will meet you back at the interesting part of the third row. Okay, once again, we are on the third row. With B, we have knit 36, so we're going to come to that decrease again. We're going to slip 1 knitwise, knit 2 together, 1 dark, 1 light, and pass slipped stitch over knit stitch, holding on to that working yarn to make sure that stitch doesn't pop off. Then I'm going to the other color, so I'm doing that on the back of the work. New color under old, because that's the way we do it. And well, again, consistency just means the piece is going to lay more nicely, and then I'm going to go ahead and knit to the end, and this is the moment where I'm going to move that marker up to the decreased stitch. I got ahead of myself. I should have moved the marker first and then continued to knit, but then that central decrease is marked, and I can go to the end of the row and take a look at my lovely little miter building up right here. To miter. Now, you may say to yourself, why do I need to mark that center stitch when I could just know that on a right side row I'm going to go until I have 2 left of the light color, and that's going to be where I'm going to do my PSSO. It's all fun and games when you're working in the 2 colors. However, after a certain number of rows, and it will differ depending on which motif you're making, you will switch to the C color, the Aran color, and then you're only knitting with 1 color at a time, and all of the colors are the same, all the stitches are the same color, so it is not as easy to see where that PSSO happens. And so I would highly recommend you get in the habit of using the stitch marker now. But if you were feeling very confident that you don't need it in the 2 color section, I would understand that, but I do recommend you use it at the very least for the 1 color section, just so you don't lose your mind. Now, what's going to happen to the count as you knit along is that after every right side row, you will have 2 fewer stitches than the row before, and then on the wrong side row there's no change. So every time you have completed a garter stitch ridge, you will be down 2 stitches. So on the 4th row, I'm knitting across, and then I'm just going to do that color change. I'm going to make sure the yarn is where I need it to be. The other thing that I want to talk about ever so briefly while I'm knitting away here is that it is important as you complete your motifs that you don't just stick them in the bottom of your knitting bag and then you know which one is which, because you need a different number of each motif, and it is careful assembly that just makes the blanket so darn cool. It's such an interesting optical illusion. So you want to make sure that you knit the correct number of motifs in each style. But what I would do is get one of those, self-sealing plastic bags like you might put your sandwich in for lunch, and write in a permanent marker on the front. I would write motif 1 or motif 2 or motif whatever. And when I completed my motifs, I would stick them in that bag, just so when it's time to do the assembly, I won't be quite so bananas trying to figure out which one goes where. So we're coming up on that color change. So for each motif, it will tell you, so for instance for motif 1, which is what we're working on, it will say continue as established, decreasing 2 stitches in the center every right side row until 63 stitches remain, ending on a wrong side row. At that point you would change to the C color and continue on. Again, the pattern's written out so you can keep up with it, but you're basically doing the same thing over and over. On the other motifs, you will keep going until there is a different number. So I have brought my yarn forward, I brought my new color under the old color and brought it back. And again, I am not moving the marker. I prefer to move the marker every other row, but you can move the marker there if you want to. And once again, you can see the little, so here's the wrong side. If you look right by my thumbnails, you can see that little float where the yarn's just changing color. But it's very neat and it's not particularly obvious. And again, the idea of keeping it all on that one side is just for consistency's sake. That's the right side of the work. And there's the wrong side of the work where you can see just a little bit of that float. But keeping the new color coming under the old color is going to keep everything nice and neat. So you will have a little bit of a float line on the wrong side, but it will be neat and orderly. Your work will be tidy and it will not be big enough that it will catch on anything. So that's really all there is to it. Use the chart, the assembly chart, to get that look. So you can see here's the one motif, there's the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, the 5s, the 6s, and each one tells you make 9 of number 4 or make 5 of number 5. It tells you very specifically on the pattern. I mean, you even get the optical illusion just looking at the graphic. I just think this is such a clever piece of knitting, and it's also, though, very simple to knit. There's not a lot of fuss to it, and because it's in motifs that you will join afterwards, this is a perfect travel project. You can stick this in your car or in your bag if you are taking mass transit, and this is the perfect little project to work on a piece at a time, and then you finish and you have this just amazing looking blanket. So thank you so much for joining us here on yarnspirations.com as we took a look at the Knit Shadowbox Blanket. I'm Mary Beth Temple from Hooked for Life, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon.